She smiled in my face and poached every single one of my clients, without mercy, without shame. She thought I'd crumble, that I'd go broke. She even sent me a laughing emoji when I closed my office, but I wasn't finished. I was studying her books, quietly, carefully. And 6 months later, she walked into her office and found me behind her desk. My name is Samantha Quinn. I'm 35, and I used to believe that loyalty meant something. I lived in Denver, Colorado, built my own small PR office near Larimer Street, tucked between a law firm and a yoga studio. Humble, but mine. I'd spent 8 years climbing the ladder at Aspire Media, and at the top of that ladder was Chloe Ramsey. To the outside world, Chloe was the woman you wanted to be, sharp heels, sharper mind, always the first to get quoted in Forbes when a crisis broke. I looked up to her like a second mother, like a queen. She took me in when I was still an intern fumbling with coffee orders, and I repaid her with everything: late nights, pitch decks, winning clients, silent sacrifices. So when I finally landed the Fairmont Hotel account, a 6-figure contract that would have given me my own team, I thought Chloe would be proud. Instead, she looked at me like I'd just stolen her crown. She didn't say it out loud. She just started pulling back. First, I was left off the email threads. Then came the calendar mix-ups, the important calls I was never invited to, the meetings that happened without me. My gut told me something was wrong, but my heart was still loyal. It wasn't until I lost the third client in a week that I started digging. And I found them. Every proposal, every quote, every last detail I had prepped, Resent, under her name. She was forwarding my work, directly, claiming credit, signing off as senior partner. And the clients, they stayed with her. Because Chloe had the connections, the brand, the spotlight. I'll never forget the final message I received from the hotel team. We've decided to continue our partnership with Chloe. You were amazing. Truly, best of luck. My inbox felt like a coffin. And Chloe. She posted a photo that same day, glass of champagne in hand, captioned, "To loyalty and leadership." I didn't scream, I didn't confront her. I packed up my office, turned off the lights, and watched everything I built dissolve in a week. People say betrayal feels like a knife, but no. It feels like a smile you trusted twisting slowly behind your back. I left Aspire quietly, but something had shifted in me. I wasn't broken, I was just rewiring. 2 days after I shut down my office, Chloe posted a quote card on LinkedIn. White background, black serif font, very classy, very Chloe. Sometimes the loudest ones fall the hardest. She didn't tag me. Of course not. That would have been too obvious. But the comments knew. People I used to work with. People who had been in my home, who'd shared late-night deadlines and birthday cake with me, were laughing underneath it. One even wrote, "The student always forgets who the teacher is." And someone replied, "That's why you don't bite the hand that feeds you." I stared at my screen, mouth dry, heart silent. Not because it hurt. No, not anymore. It was because I finally saw her clearly. Chloe never mentored me. She groomed me for her own convenience. I was the mule that carried her glory. The face she could put forward when the client wanted diversity. The one who'd take the fall when she needed to play clean. And now that I was gone, I wasn't even worth a name drop. Just a cautionary tale. So I didn't comment. I didn't send a text. I let her enjoy her little show. Because what she didn't know was I wasn't disappearing. I was preparing. First, I moved in with Caleb, my boyfriend. A financial strategist with a mind like a razor and patience like granite. I told him everything. Not just the betrayal, but the rage, the obsession, the fire. He didn't flinch. He just nodded and said, "Then we'll build your comeback from numbers." That night, I learned the difference between feelings and figures, between revenge and return on investment, between a burn and a buyout. We started with Aspire's public filings, their real estate leases, their tech contracts, staff turnover rate. Chloe had posted about growing fast, scaling up, more locations, more clients, more noise. But underneath the glitter, her house was hollow. Her New York office was 3 months behind on rent. She had borrowed against her Denver office furniture. And worse, she had 2 lawsuits pending from ex-contractors for unpaid invoices. She was surviving on cash flow smoke. And investors don't like smoke. That's when I knew I wasn't going to start a new firm. That would be too loud, too obvious. No, I was going to buy hers. Silently, like a ghost slipping through the walls. I set up a new LLC in Texas, under a different name, not mine, not Caleb's. We hired a broker through that firm, sent feelers through industry contacts that Aspire might be open to acquisition. Of course, Chloe bit, because Chloe wanted out. She wanted to cash out before the cracks split open. She'd spent too long pretending to be untouchable. But I knew better, and I had time. For 6 months, we played the game. Caleb posed as an investment advisor. I sent suggestions through our silent partner. We reviewed her books, audited her ledgers. Every call, every signature, every document went through channels. She never once looked behind the curtain. And that was exactly the point. Because the woman who stole my clients, who laughed at my downfall, was about to sign away her kingdom without realizing she was handing it back to the one she burned. On a Thursday morning, in a co-working space off Pearl Street, the final acquisition meeting took place. Chloe arrived in her usual armor heels, hair perfect, attitude thick with false control. She didn't recognize the man across from her. Didn't notice me watching from the adjacent glass room. Didn't see the logo on the folder. She was too busy dreaming about her next chapter. "I'm excited," she said. "I think this firm can grow under the right direction." The broker nodded. So did Caleb. They pushed the papers forward. She signed twice. And it was done. Aspire Media, her pride, her weapon. Her empire was no longer hers. She rose to leave, already fishing for her sunglasses. But then the broker said one last thing. Our lead strategist would like a word. She turned and saw me, standing in the doorway. No makeup, no heels. Just me, raw, calm, unmoving. Her mouth twitched. "Samantha," she asked, like she was seeing a ghost. I smiled. "Hope the deal terms were fair," I said. She didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't breathe. And that silence was everything I had waited for. Not screams, not apologies. Just the sound of her understanding too late what she'd really sold. She left without saying a word, and I walked into the office that used to be hers, sat behind the desk she once protected like a throne, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "This isn't revenge. This is return." The next few days were a blur, but not the kind I had when I lost everything. This time, it was a blaze. I walked through the old Aspire offices with a pen and a legal pad. Every piece of furniture, every piece of art, every outdated server, they all belonged to me now. And I wasn't sentimental. I gutted the place, tore out the old branding, removed the smug photo of Chloe shaking hands with a celebrity chef. That plaque by the entrance that used to read Chloe Ramsey, founder and visionary, gone. I replaced it with one word, Quinn. I hired back 2 of the graphic designers who had been let go in the layoff a year prior. They were stunned to see me, one even cried. I told them the truth. This firm was stolen from good people. I'm here to give it back. And I meant it. But don't get me wrong, I didn't do it out of mercy. I did it to rebuild, in the image of everything she denied me. No more fake mentorship, no more favoritism. Every pitch transparent, every contract fair. Every person who walked into my office knew I had earned my seat. Meanwhile, word spread like wildfire. The PR industry is a snake pit, but it loves drama. People started calling, asking if it was true, asking if I was back. And I'd smile on the phone and say, "Not back, just above." Even Chloe's former clients came sniffing around. A few of them asked, sheepishly, if I'd consider working with them again. And here's the thing I did. Because success isn't about holding grudges. It's about holding leverage. I charged them more. And they paid. And when the new website launched with my name, my mission, my team, I saw the analytics spike. Traffic tripled in 48 hours. We were no longer Aspire. We were Quinn & Co., built from betrayal, forged in silence. Every room in that office had once tried to erase me. Now they echoed with my footsteps. I didn't post about Chloe, didn't drag her name through mud, didn't need to, because the people who needed to know already did. And the people who once laughed at me were now forwarding their resumes. One of them even wrote in the email, "I made a mistake. I'd be honored to work under your leadership." I didn't reply, but I kept the message. As a reminder that silence is sharp, that patience is power, that revenge works best when you don't announce it. You just arrive, owning everything they thought you'd never reach. When I stepped into that office, it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt unfinished. Because while I had the keys, the nameplate, the staff, it wasn't about the title. It never was. This was about memory. And memory is slow to heal. There were moments late at night, the lights low, silence thick where I'd sit behind Chloe's old desk and feel the echoes. The echoes of doubt she planted, of humiliation I'd swallowed, of silence I'd weaponized. But I'd made a promise to myself, to every version of me that had been told you're not ready, that I would finish what I started. That meant rebuilding the company, not in her image but in mine. I didn't want Quinn & Co. to just exist. I wanted it to matter. So I started where Chloe never did, listening. I scheduled one-on-one meetings with every single employee, from the janitor to the newest intern. I asked them one question: if you could change one thing about this company, what would it be? Some were confused, some were guarded, but eventually they spoke. And what they told me was damning. Departments were siloed, promotions were political, ideas were stolen and rebranded. People were exhausted, not by work but by invisibility. It reminded me of myself, a ghost in the building, until I owned the building. So I made changes, flattened hierarchies, eliminated gatekeeping titles, created open pitch sessions where anyone really, regardless of role, could propose campaign ideas, and one by one, people stopped looking over their shoulders. They started breathing, creating, thriving, but not everyone was thrilled. Some of Chloe's old loyalists remained. They whispered in corners, questioned my moves, waited for me to fail, and that's when I realized something else. Revenge is never clean. It leaves shadows. So I kept the lights on. Transparent leadership, weekly updates, anonymous feedback boxes that I actually read. This wasn't about being liked. It was about building something that could not be undone. Meanwhile, Caleb and I were working another angle. Because Chloe wasn't done either, she still had her personal brand, her speaking gigs, her ghost-written articles praising female leadership in the digital age. She thought she could outshine me, outrun the truth. But I wasn't chasing her. I was watching her, from a distance, and one day I saw it. An event listing. She was scheduled to keynote the Denver Women in Media Summit. Same ballroom where I had once carried her bag, fetched her water, smiled while she soaked up the spotlight. This time, I bought a table, front and center. Didn't wear designer, didn't bring a photographer, just sat there quietly. She didn't see me until she was on stage. Mid-sentence, mid-pose, she faltered. Eyes caught mine, and for the first time I saw her hesitate. She finished the talk, fast, no Q&A, no mingling, and as she walked past my table, I stood. Didn't speak, just nodded, and her face cracked, because she knew this was no longer her world. It was mine. But it didn't stop there, because a week later I got a call. A producer from a national podcast. They'd heard about Quinn & Co., about the comeback, about the quiet acquisition that shook up Denver's PR scene. They wanted my story. I almost said no. Almost, but then I thought of every young woman who had been sidelined, silenced, sabotaged. So I said yes. And I told the truth. Not the revenge, but the rebuild. Not the downfall, but the rise. And when the episode aired, it exploded. My inbox filled with messages from strangers, women, students, even former clients who'd left me. They all said the same thing. Thank you. It was surreal, humbling. But most of all, it was healing, because it proved that silence isn't weakness. It's a strategy. And power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just waits until the time is right. And then it walks in, owns the room, and never has to say a word. That was my plan. Always. To walk in power, not with noise, but with purpose. And now that I had it, I wasn't letting go. 2 months into the rebuild, something unexpected happened. One of Chloe's oldest clients, an international wellness brand based in San Francisco, reached out, not to sue, but to apologize. They'd heard the podcast, read the articles. They saw what we were building, and they wanted in. The same executive who once took meetings only with Chloe now asked to fly out to meet me in person. So I prepared a room. No flash, no ego, just numbers, vision, and a quiet confidence that came from surviving hell and turning it into headquarters. When they arrived, I greeted them myself. The handshake was firm, respectful, but it was what he said next that stayed with me. I never realized the best part of Aspire left long before Chloe did. I didn't flinch, didn't glow, just nodded. Because yes, and I did leave. But I came back different. Sharper, quieter, unshakable. The deal closed in 3 weeks, our largest contract yet. The staff celebrated with pizza and playlists in the break room. I didn't make a speech, just stood in the back, watching, smiling. This wasn't about dominance. It was about restoration. There's a myth that success requires cruelty, that to win, you must become what hurt you. But I refused that. I built Quinn and Coe on 3 rules. Speak last. Listen first. And never forget who you were when no one was looking. Because that version of me, the one who cried in the car, who erased her name off the office door, who packed up her career into a cardboard box she didn't disappear, she evolved into a leader who doesn't chase validation. She creates values, and now, when I walk into my office framed with light, alive with collaboration, I no longer hear Chloe's voice in the walls. I hear mine. Clear, unapologetic, permanent. And it says, this isn't her story anymore. It's mine. About a week after that contract, I received a letter. Not an email. An actual handwritten letter. From Chloe. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, no return address. Inside 3 lines. I underestimated you. You played the long game, and you won. No apology, no request, just recognition. And that somehow was enough. Because I wasn't waiting for her to say sorry. I had already moved beyond the part of me that needed her approval. Closure didn't come in ink. It came in every decision I made without her. In every client who returned, every intern I promoted, every time I walked past the mirror and saw a woman who no longer flinched at her own reflection. I kept that letter. Not for revenge, but for record. A reminder that legacy isn't built in public. It's built in silence. In the days no one sees. In the hours you stay late not to prove anything, but because it matters. And as I stood in the conference room, looking out at the Denver skyline, I realized something. She took my clients, but I took the firm and I turned it into something she never could. Something real, something resilient, something that won't vanish when the spotlight does. Because this time, the spotlight isn't on the loudest. It's on the one who lasted. The first Monday after the rebrand, I arrived early. The sun hadn't even reached the windows yet, but I was already there, coffee in hand, walking the halls that used to haunt me. Only now, they didn't feel haunted. They felt like mine. The Quinn & Co. sign shimmered softly at the front entrance. It was minimalist, elegant, not loud, but impossible to miss. Kind of like me. That morning, I stood at the reception desk and watched as the staff walked in one by one. Some smiled, some stared. Some looked like they still weren't sure whether this was real or some slow-burning corporate fever dream. And Chloe, she wasn't gone. Not yet. Per the acquisition terms, she had been given a 2-month senior advisor role to assist with the transition. A generous formality, one that she had no idea I had orchestrated. I did it for one reason, so she could witness it. The undoing, the rebuilding, the truth of what real leadership looked like. Her desk was moved, not to punish, but to reflect her new position. I had it placed just outside the main bullpen. No glass walls, no private corner office. For the first time in her life, Chloe Ramsey sat among the people she once ruled. She didn't speak much that first day. Didn't make eye contact. But I caught her looking, watching the logo on the walls, listening to conversations that no longer included her name. That week, I hosted a town hall. Not in a hotel ballroom. Not streamed live for clout. Just an honest face-to-face with every single team member. I stood at the front of the open space, no podium, no script. Hi, I said. I'm not going to make a speech. I'm here to listen, then lead. And I did just that. I listened. They asked hard questions. Why now? What's changing? Why should we trust you? I answered every single one. Without spinning, without sugar. Because when you've been humiliated publicly, you stop fearing transparency. You crave it. By the end of that meeting, something shifted. Not in volume, not in applause, but in posture. People sat up straighter, looked at each other, looked at me, as if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to be like before. Over the next few weeks, I worked late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I reviewed old contracts, tore apart broken processes, started rebuilding the firm, not as a monument to me, but as a machine that ran better, cleaner, stronger. I hired back 3 former employees that Chloe had fired for culture fit. One of them, Maria, had once been my junior associate, brilliant but too bold for Chloe's taste. I brought her back as director of strategy. Her first day back, she hugged me and said, I never thought I'd walk through those doors again. I smiled. That makes two of us. Every comeback has its turning point. For us, it was the first big pitch under the new banner. A high-profile fashion brand from Elba had shortlisted Quinn & Co. alongside two national giants. We had one shot, and I gave it everything. The deck sleek, the message clear, the delivery sharp, no ego, all intent. We didn't just pitch them a campaign. We pitched them a revolution in brand identity. And when we finished, the room was silent. The kind of silence that holds breath. Then the client stood up and said, "That's the first time I've heard a pitch that made me rethink who we are." We won the account. $2 million, our biggest contract yet. The day that wire cleared, I walked past Chloe's desk. She looked up. I saw the news, she said. I nodded. It's only the beginning. She hesitated. I don't know what you want me to say. I paused, then leaned in just enough to whisper, "Nothing. Watching is enough." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The next day, her resignation letter was on my desk. Effective immediately. No goodbye party. No farewell post. Just gone. And in her place, opportunity, freedom, space. I took her old office not out of pettiness, but because it had the best view, and I deserved to see the city I rebuilt myself in. From up high, the following month, we hired 6 new staff, brought on a mental health consultant, launched a mentorship program pairing interns with executive-level staff. Quinn & Co. wasn't just a company. It was proof. Proof that you could rise without ruining people. That silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. That rebuilding isn't about erasing the past, but about owning it, then writing something better. One morning, Maria walked in with coffee for both of us. She sat, grinned, and said, "You realize this is legendary, right?" I laughed. "Not yet, but we're getting there." She pointed at the window. The sunrise painted the Denver skyline gold. "You already did." Weeks passed, but the momentum didn't slow. We were no longer trying to prove ourselves. We were setting a new standard. Clients didn't just come, they stayed. Referrals surged. LinkedIn buzzed with curiosity. Who is Samantha Quinn? What is Quinn & Co. doing differently? And every time someone asked, we didn't need to respond. Our work spoke loud enough. But behind the scenes, the journey wasn't without ghosts. Sometimes, I'd catch myself pausing outside Chloe's old office, my office now, and remembering what it felt like to be dismissed, to be invisible. I used that, turned it into fuel. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. And that focus birthed something rare: trust. My team trusted me because I made them feel seen. One Friday evening, as I was wrapping up reports, one of our newer hires, Jordan, knocked on the door. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." He stepped in, nervous. I heard a version of what happened before, with the company, with Chloe. "Why didn't you walk away?" I looked at him and smiled, because walking away would have meant she was right. He nodded slowly. "Thank you for not walking." After he left, I sat in silence. Not the painful kind, but the powerful kind, the kind that reminds you. Every closed door, every betrayal, every stolen opportunity was never the end. It was just the edge of the beginning, and I had finally crossed it. I stood, walked to the window, looked out over the lights of the city, my firm, my story, and for the first time in years, I felt free. That weekend, I visited my parents. They'd heard bits and pieces, of course, enough to know their daughter had gone through something, and somehow come out the other side, but they didn't know the whole story. So I told them, not all at once, not to brag, but because I wanted them to really know the weight I'd carried, and how I chose not to let it crush me. My father listened quietly. My mother cried. And when I finished, my father said something I'll never forget. "She stole your stage, and you built a stadium." I held on to those words, because he was right. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about building something so solid, so sound, so unmistakably my own that no one could ever erase it again. Monday morning, I returned to work. But I didn't feel like I was returning. I felt like I was arriving at a life I had earned, not by stepping over others, but by standing up for myself, for what I deserved, for what I rebuilt from ruin. So if you ask me now, was it worth it? Every tear, every betrayal, every sleepless night, every quiet plan, every step into rooms where I wasn't welcomed, yes. Because I didn't just take back what she stole. I built more. And this time, It's untouchable. It started with the plaque. For months, I'd walked past the silver plate outside the main conference room. It still said the Ramsey Room. Her name. Every client who came in saw it. Every team huddle. Every strategy brainstorm, it hung there. Like a remnant of the woman who tried to erase me. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, that what we were building now was more important than any label on the wall. But one morning, I stopped in front of it, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A hairline crack running straight through the art. Subtle, but enough. So I made a decision. That Friday, I called the building manager. "Take it down," I said. "Replace it with something that actually reflects the company." He asked what to replace it with. I didn't hesitate. Legacy. Not my name. Not my initials. Just one word. Because that's what this journey had become. Not revenge. Legacy. That Monday, when the team walked in and saw the new plaque etched in matte gold. Bold serif letters, they paused. And then they clapped. Not for me, but for us. Because every one of them had felt it, that shift. That rise. That breath of something lasting. But while the plaque was symbolic, the real moment came 2 weeks later. We were hosting a private strategy summit. Clients, investors, and a few well-connected journalists were invited to spend the day at our firm. See the work behind the curtain. The night before, I stayed late, rehearsing, reviewing slides, walking the space. And then an alert pinged on my phone. A Google News mention. Former Aspire Media CEO launches online course after resignation. Chloe. I clicked. She was leaning into the mentor narrative again, selling digital wisdom, using phrases like "I built an empire and learned from my leadership journey," and it hit me she still didn't get it. She still thought she'd built something. She still believed she'd led. But now, she was packaging her downfall as a masterclass. I should have been angry, but all I felt was relief. Because while she was trying to monetize her illusion, I was running a reality. And that reality was thriving. The summit went flawlessly. We unveiled 3 new campaign verticals, launched a nonprofit partnership, and closed a 7-figure retainer with a legacy tech firm. The energy in the room electric. Afterward, a journalist pulled me aside. She looked young, sharp, probably where I was 10 years ago. "Everyone's talking about your comeback," she said. "But what I want to know is, was there ever a moment you wanted to walk away?" I thought about it. The boxes. The stolen clients. The laughing emoji Chloe sent me that day. "Yes," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "And why didn't you—" I paused, then smiled. "Because the fire didn't kill me. It forged me." She nodded, scribbled the quote down. And in that moment I knew this was the final chapter. Not because I was done, but because the story had changed. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About what I chose to become when the world tried to define me. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected message from a woman named Taylor. She had just left Aspire's New York office. Said it had been slowly falling apart. Said people whispered my name like a ghost. "I don't know you," she wrote, "but thank you. You gave me the courage to leave." I stared at that message for a long time, because I remembered being her, trapped, tired, unseen. And now I was the reason someone else stood up. That's legacy. Not a name on a door, not a quote on a wall, but the ripple you cause without ever touching the water. I wrote her back, told her she was braver than she knew. And then I offered her a job. She accepted, started 2 weeks later. And on her first day, I introduced her to the team with just one line. "She's not new. She's just finally in the right room." That became a thing in our office. Right room. When we promoted someone, when someone landed a big client, when an idea finally broke through, we'd say it. "You're in the right room." Because that's what we're all really chasing. Not titles, not revenge, just the right room. The one where we're heard, seen, respected. And now, that's what Quinn & Co. had become. A room that never closes its doors on potential. That remembers what it's like to be silenced and vows never to be the silencer. Sometimes I still think about Chloe. I wonder if she's happy. I hope she is. Because peace, when it's real, doesn't come from seeing your enemies fall. It comes from knowing you rose without becoming them. So yes, she stole my clients, but I built a company. She laughed at my pain. I turned it into purpose. She wrote me off. I wrote my legacy. And this legacy, it doesn't end here. It only begins. That evening, I stayed behind after everyone had left. The lights were low, the office quiet. I walked through every room. touched the backs of chairs, read the names on doors, paused at the glass-walled war room where our biggest ideas were born. Everything I had once dreamed about, had once cried over losing, was now here. Not gifted, not inherited, earned. I made my way to the rooftop. The wind was cool, Denver's skyline glowing like a silent witness to everything that had passed. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to exhale deep and full. This wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a foundation, the kind you build brick by brick, in silence, in the dark. When no one's watching, I looked up at the stars and whispered not to Chloe, not to anyone in particular, just to the night itself. They almost buried me, but I wasn't a body, I was a seed. Then I turned around, walked back downstairs, and turned off the last light. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I smiled, because some victories don't need a microphone. They just need the right silence. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a leadership forum in San Diego. I almost declined. Not because I was nervous, no. Those days were long gone. But because I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything anymore. Still, something inside me said yes. The auditorium was full. Lights bright, people expectant. I stood there, no slides, no notes, just my story. And I told it. Every betrayal, every silence, every twist. But more importantly, I told them what came after. The rebuilding, the redemption, the legacy. When I finished, there was no standing ovation, just stillness. And then someone in the back whispered, "She built the firm from the ashes." And I smiled, because that was enough. Afterwards, a line formed. Young women, tired executives, quiet men who said they had never heard leadership described that way. I shook every hand, heard every story, and I realized this wasn't just my ending. It was the beginning of someone else's. Because when one woman rises from fire, she lights the way for others. And I had become the spark. Not just for Quinn & Co., but for everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. I left that forum lighter, not because the past was gone, but because I no longer carried it. I wore it like armor. Quiet, brilliant, unbreakable.